Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moving on to new business, item A, discussion on quarterly drills. A1, discussion on 2024 Q2 drill. Would anyone take that?
So we haven't had any drills lately. We do have an up and coming drill for, I think this will be Q4 2024. So we're planning that right now. That's going to be October 2nd. So we're requesting fire department to come in and work with the emergency response team, and that'll be an extrication out of the underground, and then we'll see how that process works with the handover from our emergency response teams to the fire department.
So that takes care of new business for number 2 as well, since it was second, and then for.
Can somebody, is this on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I just can't hear you. You have to speak in your
No.
mic. There you go.
And so new business for item number, or B, discussion on wildland fire impact and hazardous fuel reduction.
Just a reminder though on item A, we are required by our contract to put on these drills, so we need to up the repetition. We also have to up the repetition on this meeting. So there will be another one next month, and so we can catch up on our quarterly cycle. So we are required to put these things on a quarterly basis. So.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me. My name is Dallas Lane. I'm the fire marshal for the Superior Fire Department. And just by way of introduction, fire marshal is a position in the fire service that is basically the legal or law enforcement position of the fire department. As fire marshal, I'm responsible for everything involving inspections, enforcement, investigation of complaints, investigation of fires, community development, community planning, working with the business community for community development, and emergency planning, emergency management. So, in that capacity, I've been actively involved in the wildland fire safety, fire prevention program for the town, and so we appreciate the opportunity to present you with kind of an update and status report of where we are. And the good news is that it's all good news. So, with that, first of all, Superior is what's designated as a FireWise community. And FireWise is a nationwide fire safety program which is sponsored by the National Fire Protection Association. And the purpose is for protecting communities from wildland fires. In the FireWise program, we provide standards for reducing and controlling hazardous fuels to create what's referred to as a defensible space around the town and around structures. We've been involved in that program since 2021. The Telegraph fire occurred in June of 2021, and I am happy to say that we were getting involved in the FireWise program prior to the Telegraph fire, not as a result of the Telegraph fire, but we were just getting started. The Telegraph fire started just south of...
Welcome, and thank you for choosing freeconferencecall.com. You're helping people. If you are the host, press star now. Otherwise, please wait, and you will be joined
Ryan's
into
on the phone,
conference.
sorry.
Okay. Yeah, the Telegraph fire in June
Please announce
2021
yourself.
started just south of town and quickly burned upward, northward toward the town, and eventually, some 2 weeks later, ended up being 186,000 acres. So it was the largest fire burning in the country at the time. And to just give you a little dynamic, the fire started on Friday and was handled as an initial attack by local fire departments in cooperation with the Forest Service. By afternoon, we had become a type 3 state fire. By Saturday morning, it had become a type 2 federal fire. And before the type 2 incident management team could get unloaded and set up a command post, it became a federal type 1 fire, which is the largest category. And a federal type 1 incident management team came in to run it. And there's, just to give you a scope, there's only 6 type 1 federal incident commanders in the country. This fastest accelerating fire from initial attack to a type 1 federal all-hands fire this occurred. So this was a major event threatening the town. As the fires burned up and spread around the town, it got on all sides, and we were by midnight or 1 o'clock Saturday night within less than an hour of making the decision to start to evacuate parts of the town or not. So a very dynamic event. But what saved us, in addition to a massive response from state and federal firefighting resources and air attack, was the very judicious use of fire breaks or fire lines around the town. And some substantial fire lines were cut around the town, part by using existing roads and part by connecting those roads into full fire breaks around the town. After the fire settled down and it was over, and we got out of that in Superior without losing any structures or having any serious injuries or loss of life. We could have very easily been completely overrun by it, but we weren't, and it was very fortunate. So I say all that to say that following that, the town, specifically the town manager, worked closely with the State Department of Forestry and Fire Management and the Tonto National Forest, and made arrangements and got funding to turn the fire breaks that were established during the Telegraph fire and make them permanent fire breaks around town. So right now we have a fire break south of town that starts at the 177, follows Forest Road over the Golf Course Road, Perlite Road, down around Martinez Ranch and Castleberry to the Airport Road and up. These have been maintained in 2023 and 2024 through use of AmeriCorps and 2 other contractors. The fire breaks are, in Forest Service terms, a chain and a half, which is 90 feet, 60 feet, 30 feet. So 60 feet on one side of the road, 30 feet on the other, plus the road. These are in excess of 100-foot wide fire breaks. So the town is very secure from that standpoint. It's been very successful. The idea with the fire breaks is not that, excuse me, I know better than to do this. Fire breaks are not scorched earth, all dirt breaks. The idea, the concern is that the fire can burn rapidly through light fuels like grass, and then as the fire intensifies burning in the grass, it spreads to brush, specifically dead brush, which is referred to as a ladder fuel, which starts to spread the fire vertically and then into the trees. The trees are not the hazard. The trees are the most difficult thing to ignite, and is not the primary reason for fire spread. It's the ground fuels, the grass, and the dead ladder fuels. So that's what the focus of the fire break is. As a visitor, if you were to go out there, you'd probably have a hard time finding the fire breaks. They're well trimmed, they're clean, the trees are standing, the trees have been trimmed, the dead branches, the trees haven't just been cut down. The grass has been cut down to where it's low and won't sustain the fire, and the ladder fuels and the dead brush has been removed. So it's quite an engineering project to create fire breaks and maintain them. But they're also not adverse to the beauty of the landscape or the use of the land. The fire breaks then I'll tell you about a couple other fires that they've been successful in helping with. The other part of the project is inside the community, inside the developed portion of Superior. With the Firewise program, we deal with individual properties, whether they be commercial or residential, and of course, in this case, the mine properties. We have a good relationship with that in making sure that vacant lots are cleaned, that unoccupied houses have the brush cleared up around them, and what's called the wildland urban interface, which is where the town meets the outside forest area. There's a break again, especially in the ground and ladder fuels. And that's the biggest project we're working on. We've got a number of hazardous lots and properties cleaned up in town. We have a lot more to go. It's an ongoing process, and then as soon as you get them done, it becomes a maintenance project to go back and do them again. We rely on the property owners to take care of their own property. The mine's been very responsive to requests for that in some of the undeveloped properties. We have problems with vacant properties that we don't know who owns them, or the owners are deceased and there hasn't been an heir that's taken over the property. But that's just a part of the process. So between those two, between working inside the town and surrounding the town, we've accomplished a very successful, and I say we, primarily Todd, has accomplished a very successful defensive posture for the town. The other area that was a big concern is the Queen Creek Wash. Historically, we've always been very concerned that if we got a fire started down at the Queen Creek Wash in 60 or down behind Railroad Park, we'd probably stop in May. It was going to be ugly. That's been greatly addressed. A separate grant, separate funding, but the cleanup in Queen Creek Wash has been about half completed, and the project is approved to continue going. So again, we have a fighting chance to maintain the natural vegetation and landscape, but still be able to have a reasonable chance to contain a fire if we get one, and hold it to the area of origin rather than the block of origin or much larger. So that's the plan, and we're half done with it, or a little more. The big part from protecting the town itself is the fire breaks around the outside of the town, and that in cooperation with State Fire and Tonto National Forest to maintain those. Getting Queen Creek Wash rehabbed for both the water reclamation project, for economic community development, and for all the other reasons. Fire prevention and fire protection is right in there with it. You can imagine what we'd have if that wash was still overgrown and we got a fire down in Main Street area. Could be a very bad outcome. So that's what's occurred in the last 2.5 years, and it's been very proactive. And I don't know of another community that's pulled off something like this. This has been very unique and very successful. We've had 6 fires of note. Now, the Superior Fire Department covers a large area for initial response for the Tonto National Forest, and we cover about 35 miles of highway, and we have a lot of vehicle-related roadside fires that start that we respond on. So responding to vegetation-type fires is a regular weekly event, but large fires are unfortunately less common. We've had about 6 of them. We've had 3 fires in the area between the Highlands, or the fire station, and the high school going south, out of town. Of course, the wood fire just earlier this month, it went about 12,000 acres, and we had a fire at a homeless camp out there. It was an unattended fire, cooking fire that caught vegetation on fire, and another one. So we've had 3 fires south of the high school, south of the fire station, that could have been very threatening fires. that were within the fire break area and within the area where fuels are maintained and managed, and had consequently spread very slowly, didn't develop intensity and speed to them, were handled by the initial attack and control, and the town was never in a position of being threatened. We've had 3 fires in Queen Creek Wash this summer, down behind the Highway 60 park. All 3 of those were human caused, and 2 of them got substantially large down behind the park. But again, because of the work that was done through the grant and AmeriCorps, the AmeriCorps crew that's been in twice working on the fire breaks, there was enough dead and hazardous fuels removed down there, and in cooperation with the Lost Trails, coordinating the trails as also being fire breaks, those fires were contained to a reasonable area, and we didn't have the threat of those fires spreading up Queen Creek Wash into town, and we were able to control. We have a concern that of those 6 fires I'm talking about, 4 of them were human caused, and so that's a significant problem. I realize they're vegetation fires, they're not structure fires, we don't have a large dollar loss from them, but we've got a serious threat to the community from human caused fires being our number 1 fire cause in the community. But again, like I said, when I first started, the good news is that the system that was developed after the Telegraph fire has been implemented and ongoing and maintained year to year, and the relationship with National Forest and State Fire has been good. They've backed us up. They've had equipment staged up here during the fire season when we were the greatest threat, and so we got through another season with literally no major loss and no injuries to wildland fires. We're going to keep going with the program the way it is, and the emphasis from this point on is going to be more toward the developed part of town and residential lots and vacant lots, and of course the removal of dilapidated structures as fire threats fits into that scenario. And, so that's the status of where we are. It's all been successful. A lot of work on some people's part, especially people down there with chainsaws and power tools and clearing brush, and that a lot of work involved. So very successful, and again, not sucking up to the boss, but Todd really is the person who put this together and made the contacts and persuaded the agencies to cooperate and found the grant money and that sort of thing. So as a result of that, the town of Superior is in much better condition than many communities similar to us. So, questions or anything specific right there? Fill in for you?
I guess, Dallas, in your opinion, are there any areas in town that still need work though? Anything that you can either advise around the mine that you've seen, or other areas around town that you're concerned?
Yes. Of course, the biggest area I mentioned is the Queen Creek Wash and down behind the park. But anything, if you can envision it, anything that's got a hill. I believe it's been cleaned up recently, but the mine property on the north side of the old Phoenix Road, kind of coming up behind ADOT, to some old buildings up there. Difficult to get to. It's behind private property. It's down the hill from Main Street, and so it's kind of an isolated area. It has some homeless people staying there quite often. If we get a fire back in there, it's going to burn quite a bit before it gets out to Main Street. We can get to it and fight it. So there's a bunch of those individual spots around town, but they're fairly contained, and so that's the ones we're trying to identify. I know we identified that one. Public Works Director and I did a month ago, and he contacted you folks, and that was good resolved, and so we're in good shape there, but those are the kinds of things
Just a
we're
question.
looking for.
I have a question. Is this by the ADOT yard? Is that what we're talking about? Main Street by the ADOT yard?
Behind the ADOT yard, going
Behind
down the
the-
hill behind it.
Okay, yeah, because I think, I know of at least two major fires there, right against the ADOT yard. So that's a very good target area. So far, we are, counting the Dr. Wolf donation, we are 9 successful grants and 4 unsuccessful. So 13 total grants to get to this point. This will be an ongoing thing for the foreseeable future. Because you put a fire break in, you have to maintain it and in perpetuity. So there'll be retreats, there'll be expansions, there'll be larger fire. Hopefully, we can get some of the area between the fire breaks and the town itself cleared, which would be a pretty lofty goal. It's 30 acres plus, so that will require probably a $2 million grant, which doesn't exist to my knowledge yet. So hopefully there's going to be more grant sources coming as global warming gets worse. They're going to fund this a little better. Right now, too much money goes to suppression, not enough to prevention, just like with every other, fire marshal can tell you. It's not sexy to prevent a fire. It's really, you look great in that big red fire truck spraying a hose, but fire marshal with his badge, it just doesn't have the same particular attractiveness. So, but that's the challenge going forward. There's less prevention money than there is suppression. So hopefully that's going to be reversing trend, but we're about maxing out the grant sources now.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anybody? Thank you, Alice.
Thank you, Brenda.
Next item under new business is the discussion on new ambulance purchase.
Yeah, I'd like to make some comments on the ambulance. We got the ambulance about a year or so ago from a company out of Texas. They refurbished old ambulances, used ambulances. And we were able to acquire this one. We did some extensive looking through it. I had Jerry Campos was the head of this project. He did the calling, he did the looking, and got the specs. We went over the specs, a couple of ambulances we saw. And this one right here, we decided to get this one just because of the condition it looked in, power chain it had in it, and it was a pretty decent ambulance. We did have to put some money into it, but we got it inspected by DHS a couple of weeks ago. They gave us the green light. She's good to go to put it in service. So as soon as I have a little glitch in one of my lights, once I get that fixed, we're going to put it into service the first outline ambulance for 911 traffic. We still have our other 2006, the Lifeboat. That thing is solid, man. It's old, but it runs good and it does what it's supposed to do. So as I rotate these out, I want to repair the other one, do some maintenance on them. That will be, we'll have a good fleet of 3, but I like the 2016 Ford we have here, or 2017 Dodge. Those are probably our #1 ambulance to use for any calls for first off crew or second ambulance. We'll be using this 2016 one right here.
This ambulance will be paid off in 3 years. At that point, my suggestion to the chief would be to immediately buy another one, about the same price range, so that we can have a much newer fleet. The average age of our fleet is really skewed by that 2001. It needs to be retired. I think it's 287,000 miles or something ridiculous like that. So hopefully in the next 3 years we get this thing, we get it paid off, and then we can just immediately roll it into the next one.
Yeah, and to purchase a brand new one, you're looking at 350,000 easy, plus maybe a year and a half to 2 years to get it after you order it. So if you don't look into any ambulance, you need to do it in 2 years. You might be able to get it in 4 years. It's this way it is right now. Like buying any emergency vehicles, costs some money. It takes a couple of years to get them. New fire truck, take 4 years to get one. So you got to plan ahead. That's for sure.
And that fire truck, by the way, has been run through all the committees in Congress. It is now waiting in the appropriation. As we're all familiar with the what's going on in our federal government. Appropriations are running into internal political problems. Hopefully they'll pass sometime soon, and will be confirmed on the fire truck. Then we'll have to finalize the remainder of the funding, because even if you get an earmark, it has to conform to the funding mechanisms rules, which means if it's a 60-40 grant, you still have to come up with your 40%, even if it's an earmark. So we'll have to finance or do something, have a conversation about that. But not a decision point yet. We're not funded yet. But hopefully that if the continuing resolution passes for USDA, the Agriculture Department, hopefully this will be, we'll find out about this. It could be any day. It could be next week. It could be 5 months from now when they stop arguing. So, but we're pretty. Our lobbyists say this is pretty much a sure thing. It's in the budget. They would have to actively remove it.
Any questions on the ambulance?
Yeah, just one, was money used from the ESA funds used to purchase the?
Yes.
Okay.
And the payments will be paid for out of the capital expenditure section of the emergency services.
Yep.
Again, as we're all aware, the emergency services funding, when it first came out, it was determined it would be primarily used for capital expenditures. We didn't want to put it into payroll or to reoccurring expenses. It was going to be primarily for capital expenditures. So currently the emergency services is paying for the entire police fleet and for the ambulance, and that is taking most of the available funding. So there's not much left to discuss. There's no capital expenditures that we have to discuss this year because there's no money left over. It's all going to the fleet.
And then I guess just one follow-up question. What was the total cost for the ambulance purchase?
It was
Full cost 70,000.
It was 70 plus 7,000 for the cot. So it was a $7,000 down payment. It's a $25,000 a year payment, and it'll be paid off in 3 years. And we spent about $20,000 fixing it.
I would definitely like to get a load arm for this one. Automatic razor. It saves injuries, and this one doesn't have it. It has a slot for it, so we'll have to see if it's a funding to get that put in, because that's a lifesaver. The last one, I think, it was 25,000 to put it, the whole setup in our Dodge.
If you say fire service or ambulance service, just triple the cost of anything.
We'd put mine on the back of it, it'll quadruple it.
Should it cost $25,000 for an arm that picks it up? And
Yeah.
That's part of it already.
Well, we have a gurney for it, made for that. Our striker gurney, it's automatic like our other one. So we got two of those, but we don't have that strong arm in this ambulance razor. And that's what I like to get in it, because it's so easy. Safer for everybody, trying to struggle to pick somebody up, and it works good.
hopefully when we buy the next one, it'll be in it, because it's in the new NFPA standards, but it wasn't in the older, about 2016, 2017, it wasn't there yet. But all the new ones theoretically should have it in, because it's NFPA now.
And I look at this one, I see a track down the middle, like I bet you just unbolted, bolt one in there, but of course that's, ambulance costs money. It'd be great.
And there isn't any extra money in the emergency services funds to pay for things like this. Normally what we would do is we'd put it in the yearly adoption, but there's just no money left over at this point.
Any other questions or comments? Carrying on, we don't have anything to approve on the new business, so we have a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
And meeting adjourned at 6:30.